If you could search anywhere in the world for the most famous lost city in history, where would you go? Expeditions, submarines, documentaries, and millions of people have already combed entire oceans looking for it. But the most shocking detail about Atlantis isn't where it is. It's that, in all likelihood, it never existed. Here's the twist in this story. Humanity's most searched-for legend appears in exactly 2 texts in the entire world, written by a single man, more than 2,300 years ago. No source before him, none after, for centuries. This is the true story of Atlantis, and it's far stranger than any legend. That man's name is Plato, a Greek philosopher, one of the most influential thinkers who ever lived. Around 360 BC, he wrote 2 dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, and in them, for the first time in recorded history, someone told the story of Atlantis. Notice this, no Greek historian before Plato mentions an island called Atlantis. No Egyptian, no Phoenician, no Babylonian. Herodotus, the father of history, had traveled the whole of Egypt nearly a century earlier and never heard of it. The legend is born with Plato, and only with him. Plato says he learned the story through Solon, the great Athenian lawgiver, who in turn supposedly heard it from Egyptian priests in the city of Sais, about 2 centuries earlier. A chain of transmission with several links: priests, Solon, a distant relative, and finally Plato. Not one of those links can be verified. And here's the most honest point this video can give you right up front. Plato was not a historian. He was a philosopher. And Greek philosophers used invented stories, myths, allegories, all the time, on purpose, to teach an idea. That's exactly what he did with Atlantis. The proof is close to home. Plato's own most famous student, Aristotle, was skeptical. According to ancient accounts, he supposedly said something like, "The man who invented it also made it disappear." In plain terms, his own disciple thought it was his teacher's fiction. Even so, for more than 2,000 years, Atlantis refused to die. It became a treasure map, a lost continent, a book cover, a Hollywood movie, an internet theory. No other literary invention from antiquity has had such a long, and such a distorted, afterlife. So here's this video's promise. No selling fantasy as fact. We're going to show you exactly what Plato wrote, why he wrote it, how it turned into a pseudoscience industry, and, in the end, the real, spine-chilling catastrophes that the legend may be, without meaning to, keeping alive in memory. Because the truth behind Atlantis isn't a city that sank in a single day. It's better than that. It's proof that entire civilizations, for real, provably, have disappeared under the water. Just not the way you imagined. Let's start with what Plato actually wrote. According to Plato, far beyond the Pillars of Hercules, what we today call the Strait of Gibraltar, there was an island larger than Libya and Asia Minor combined. An oceanic empire called Atlantis, older than any civilization known to the Greeks themselves. In Plato's legend, the island's origin was divine. The god Poseidon fell in love with a mortal woman named Cleito, surrounded the hill where she lived with concentric rings of water and land, and had 10 sons with her, the first kings of Atlantis, who divided the island among themselves. At the center, according to the account, stood the capital city, alternating rings of sea and land, linked by canals and bridges, with a golden temple dedicated to Poseidon right at the heart of it all. A design so geometric and perfect that it sounds more like a classroom diagram than the actual layout of any real city. Plato describes the Atlanteans as fabulously wealthy. 2 harvests a year, exotic animals, and an almost magical metal called orichalcum that gleamed like fire, in his words, used to cover entire walls and temples. To this day, not a single trace of orichalcum has ever been found anywhere in the world. Still, according to the account, Atlantis commanded a gigantic naval fleet, and 10 kings ruled at the same time, each with his own army, all swearing loyalty to a sacred law engraved on a metal pillar, until, generation after generation, something began changing inside them. Because this isn't an adventure story, it's a moral parable. The Atlanteans, Plato writes, started out too rich, too powerful, and the divine part within them grew more diluted with every generation, until all that was left was greed and arrogance disguised as virtue. Driven by that pride, Atlantis attacks. The fleet advances to subjugate the entire Mediterranean and runs into a single city that resists alone, abandoned by its own allies. Ancient Athens, idealized by Plato as the perfect model of courage and civic virtue. Athens wins, and that's where the story's moral fully reveals itself. It's not conquest of territory that matters to Plato. It's the contrast between the empty arrogance of Atlantis and the true virtue of Athens. Atlantis exists in this story only to lose. Then comes the punishment. According to Plato, violent earthquakes and floods strike the region, and in a single terrible day and night, the entire island of Atlantis sinks into the ocean and disappears. Along with it, that whole ancient Athenian army is swallowed by the earth as well. A little remembered detail, Plato never finished the story. The dialogue Critias, where he gets into the details of Atlantis, stops abruptly in the middle of a sentence, right at the moment when Zeus is about to gather the gods to judge the Atlanteans' arrogance. No one knows why. Did he die before finishing it? Did he abandon the project? No one knows for sure. But look at what remained. An allegory about pride and punishment, told by a philosopher, interrupted right at its peak, and which, even unfinished, would become one of the most obsessively searched for stories in all of human history. For almost 2,000 years after Plato, the standard answer was simple: Atlantis was allegory, not fact. Philosophers of late antiquity and medieval theologians, for the most part, treated the story exactly as Plato intended, a thought exercise, not a map of truth. The turning point came in the 19th century with a single book. In 1882, American politician and writer Ignatius Donnelly published Atlantis, the Antediluvian World, claiming, with no archaeological evidence whatsoever, that the island had been real and the mother of all human civilizations. Donnelly's book sold enormously and changed everything. Suddenly, Egyptians, Maya, and Mesopotamian peoples began being described as children of Atlantean refugees, as if none of these peoples had been capable of inventing their own pyramids, their own writing, their own astronomy on their own. Then came the occultists. The Russian Helena Blavatsky, founder of Theosophy, folded Atlantis into a spiritual mythology of her own, complete with lost races and psychic powers. By now there was no attempt at proof at all, only revelation, faith, and self-proclaimed authority. Decades later, American Edgar Cayce, known as the Sleeping Prophet, gave, in trance, more than 700 readings describing Atlantis with advanced technology and energy crystals, and even predicted it would rise again from the ocean. The date he gave has long since passed. Nothing has risen. Cinema and television did the rest. Every generation got its own Atlantis. Superheroes, cartoons, sensationalist documentaries on channels that were supposed to be about science. Plato's legend became an entertainment franchise, and for a lot of people, it became historical fact simply from being repeated so often. But there is a dark side to this story that needs to be said plainly. The idea of an advanced mother civilization was, in fact, used to deny that indigenous, African, and Mesoamerican peoples had built their own marvels on their own, an argument with racist roots still repeated today. And the myth went even further. Nazi mysticism appropriated Atlantis as the supposed cradle of a master race through groups like the Thule Society. This use of the legend is not a harmless curiosity. It is disinformation with a track record of real harm, and it needs to be treated as such. It's worth repeating, none of this has any backing in archaeology, genetics, or history. These are claims without evidence, repeated on authority or on faith, never on proof. And this is exactly where we need to stop asking, where did it sink, and start asking, what has real science actually found? Because while occultists, psychics, and ideologues were building their fantasy Atlantis, geologists, archaeologists, and oceanographers spent the entire 20th century doing the dull, real work, mapping the ocean floor inch by inch. And what they found was definitive. Before dismantling the legend, it's worth looking at the real source of everything. An ancient manuscript of the dialogue Timaeus, copied and recopied over 1,500 years, the one true root from which this entire forest of Atlantis legends grew. Now, what science discovered? First, geology is unforgiving. Entire continents do not sink into the ocean overnight. There is no known geological mechanism, not an earthquake, not an eruption, not a flood, capable of swallowing a landmass the size of a continent in 24 hours. Plate tectonics, mapped with sonar and satellite throughout the 20th century, shows exactly what exists in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Young oceanic crust, submarine volcanic ridges, and no city, no sunken landmass, no trace of any civilization at all. And there's another problem, an even simpler one, the chronology. Plato says Atlantis existed and sank 9,000 years before Solon's time, which, doing the math, places this supposed event at around 11,600 years ago. 11,600 years ago is, in practice, the end of the last ice age. And at that time, all over the world, humanity lived in small groups of hunter-gatherers. There were no empires, no naval fleets, no stone cities with golden temples, anywhere on the planet. In other words, even if Atlantis had existed exactly as Plato described it, it would have existed in an era when no urban civilization had even begun to form yet. A literal Atlantis, the way it was described, is simply impossible. That's the honest verdict. Neither geology, nor archaeology, nor genetics finds any trace of a real Atlantis, in the Atlantic or anywhere else. Decades of expeditions funded by dreamers came back empty-handed, because there was nothing there to find. But here the story turns a corner, and this is where it gets more interesting than any legend. Because, although Plato's Atlantis is impossible, the myth may carry, in distorted form, the memory of catastrophes that really happened. And those are spine-chilling. Picture a satellite flying over the Atlantic today, scanning every meter of the ocean floor with the highest precision sonar. No pyramid, no wall, no city, just kilometers of sediment and the submarine volcanic ridge that separates Earth's tectonic plates. Except that, in the Mediterranean, not the Atlantic, there really is an island that suffered, literally, one of the biggest explosions in human history. And it sits just a few kilometers from a real, advanced civilization that vanished far too abruptly to be a coincidence. It's time to meet Thera. Around 1600 BC, in the middle of the Aegean Sea, the volcanic island of Thera, which we know today by the name of Santorini, exploded in one of the most violent eruptions ever recorded in human history. The explosion was so powerful that the volcano collapsed in on itself, forming a gigantic caldera where solid land had once been, a sunken crater more than 60 kilometers around, today filled with the blue waters of the Aegean Sea. It's hard to put into words the size of the scar that remained. Today, flying over Santorini, you can see exactly that caldera, volcanic cliffs hundreds of meters high dropping straight into the turquoise sea, exactly where an entire island once stood. Very close by, on the island of Crete, the most advanced civilization in Bronze Age Europe was flourishing, the Minoans. Monumental palaces like the one at Knossos, indoor plumbing, colorful frescoes, and a naval fleet so dominant that historians call it a thalassocracy, an empire of the sea. A real Minoan fresco, preserved for nearly 3,700 years, shows life before the catastrophe. Dolphins leaping, young people practicing sports, flowering gardens painted in colors that still impress archaeologists today. After Thera's explosion came the tsunamis, the rain of volcanic ash over entire farmlands, and the collapse of the trade routes that sustained the Minoan economy. In the decades that followed, this brilliant civilization fell into rapid decline and never again recovered its former splendor. On Thera itself, the Minoan city of Akrotiri was buried under layers of volcanic ash and preserved almost intact, like a Bronze Age Pompeii, 1,300 years before Pompeii itself. Streets, two-story houses, vivid frescoes, everything frozen in time. And here's why so many scholars see this episode as the strongest real echo of Atlantis. an advanced island power, wealthy, owner of a mighty fleet, destroyed catastrophically and suddenly by nature's own fury. The resemblance is hard to ignore. There's even an attempt to make the numbers match. Plato speaks of 9,000 years before Solon, and of a location beyond Gibraltar. Some scholars suggest a possible Egyptian translation error, a factor of 10 too many, which would bring the event closer to 900 years before Solon, within the Mediterranean. It's only a hypothesis, with no confirmation at all. Notice this: we are not saying that Thera is Atlantis. We're saying it's the strongest real candidate to have inspired. Even if distorted by generations of oral retelling, much of the legend Plato inherited. But it isn't the only real catastrophe the sea is hiding. There is a Greek city that, unlike Atlantis, we know with absolute certainty existed, and that really did sink in a single night. Its name is Helike, and the story begins in the Gulf of Corinth. In 373 BC, a violent earthquake followed by a tsunami struck Helike in the middle of the night. The entire city was swallowed by the sea within hours. A real sank in a single night. Proven, documented by authors of that very era. And here's the most chilling detail. 373 BC falls within Plato's adult life. It's almost certain that this recent, real, shocking catastrophe was still fresh in his mind when he sat down to write about an entire island disappearing in a single day. Helike remained lost for centuries, itself becoming a Greek legend, until archaeologists rediscovered it in the early 2000s, buried under the sediment of a coastal lagoon, with the ruins of houses and temples still exactly where they had sunk. And Helike isn't the only case. Nearby, on the southern coast of Greece, lies Pavlopetri, the oldest submerged city ever mapped by archaeologists anywhere in the world, with streets, houses, and tombs visible just a few meters underwater, dating back more than 3,000 years. Now we travel much farther away and much further back in time, to the end of the last ice age, when sea level was much lower than it is today, and a vast plain connected, by dry land, what is now Great Britain to the European continent. That plain would later be given an archaeologist's name, Doggerland. Rivers, forests, hunting valleys, an entire territory inhabited by real human communities, today completely covered by the cold waters of what we call the North Sea. Doggerland's end came in stages, the slow rise of sea level over millennia, and then one final, catastrophic blow, a huge underwater landslide near Norway, called the Storegga Slide, around 6,200 BC, which triggered a mega tsunami. To this day, fishing boats working the North Sea haul up, caught in their nets, stone tools carved by human hands and mammoth bones. Real, physical proof that real people lived, hunted, and died on a land the ocean swallowed. So notice what we actually have, with no fantasy at all. The sea really does swallow inhabited lands. This isn't legend. It's recorded geology, it's proven archaeology. It's just that there was never a single lost supercivilization. There were several real tragedies, in different places, in very different centuries. So why does Atlantis, specifically, refuse to die after more than 2,000 years? Because it fuses two universal human fears, the fear of sudden catastrophe and the fascination with a lost paradise that only we, the initiated few, can see. Add to that the seduction of every conspiracy theory, the idea that there's a secret truth hidden by the experts or by official science, when, in reality, it's precisely the scientists who did the work of investigating and, honestly, ruled the hypothesis out. Every generation reinvents its own Atlantis in the image of its own fears. Donnelly in the 19th century, the occultists in the early 20th, the Bermuda Triangle in the 70s, streaming documentaries today. The packaging changes. The central fantasy stays exactly the same. So here's the verdict. No beating around the bush. There is no evidence whatsoever of a literal Atlantis. Geology rules out a sunken continent in the Atlantic. Plato's chronology falls in an era with no cities. Archaeology has never found anything. Plato invented Atlantis as a philosophical parable. But, and this is the story's final turn, Plato's parable rhymes, in a strange and genuine way, with events we know really happened. The explosion of Thera that may have inspired part of it, Helike sinking in a single night within Plato's own lifetime, and Doggerland swallowed by the sea at the end of the Ice Age. The real lesson behind all of this isn't about lost continents. It's that the sea, in fact, erases entire civilizations, and that no society, no matter how rich, advanced, or proud it may be, is safe from either its own arrogance or nature's completely indifferent fury. And that is exactly the moral Plato wanted to teach from the start, more than 2,300 years ago. Pride, without limit, always meets its punishment. He just wrapped that lesson in a story too good to be forgotten. Too good, even, to be recognized as pure fiction. So, if you had lived in Plato's time, hearing this dialogue for the first time in a real Athens, would you have realized right away that it was an allegory? Or would you have fallen, as so many people fell afterward, for the temptation to believe that a perfect paradise, swallowed by the sea, had really existed? Because that is, perhaps, the most honest question Atlantis leaves us with. Why do we prefer to believe in a perfect, lost civilization, rather than accept that real history, full of real eruptions, earthquakes, and tsunamis, is already frightening enough on its own? Atlantis never existed the way Plato described it, but Thera really existed. Helike really existed. Doggerland really existed. And each one of them reminds you of exactly the same thing. No civilization, no matter how advanced it may seem today, is guaranteed safety from the sea, from the earth, or from time. If this search for the truth behind the myth caught your interest, subscribe to the channel. Every week, we separate legend from fact in the stories that shaped the world. And to continue this journey through cities that time really did swallow, watch the video on Pompeii, the last day, showing on your screen right now. The channel also has the real stories of Angkor and the Maya, cities the jungle really did swallow. Until the next story.